Hello and welcome to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
We are here to delight you and intrigue you with tales of mysteries, both solved and unsolved, and monsters, cryptids, sometimes people who act monstrously, and mayhem, which is pretty much what we leave everywhere we go, and the stuff, the crazy crap that happens in life that interests us.
Yes, yay.
And who are you?
Let's introduce ourselves. We're operating on all negative 2 cylinders today. In fact, this is the second time we've opened the show because I called it the wrong thing the first time. All right. I am Shannon Lawrence. Hi.
Hello.
Hello. I am a horror author. You can find my books. Yay! Oh, because I had a book come out.
Yay!
Yay!
Yes, you did. On your birthday.
Happy Gula Days. You can find this online. Anyway, mom of 2 teenagers. I don't see them anymore. You'd think that I would see them all the time because we're in a pandemic and we're not going anywhere. But they're just locked in their room, so I don't see them. Mom of 4 cats. That's stupid. Who are you?
I almost feel like it's an accusatory. Who are you?
Who are you?
I am MB Partlow, former tightrope performer and Olympic equestrian wannabe. I am also a mother of 2, but they're not teenagers anymore.
You seem about the same as
yes, except your son moves like a fucking
He's
cat.
stealthy. I know. My daughter, who weighs like 2 pounds, you hear her coming. I think it's the bony heels.
Clacking on.
That's right. But him, he's just like, ooh, when he goes in, he scares the hell out of my husband sometimes. I feel the presence, so he doesn't surprise me. Like, I feel him before he's there. But he's quiet as hell.
He is. He just snuck up behind me.
He was right behind you, and you're like, whoop.
I heard the ice machine start, and I turn around, and there's this. He drinks out of a water container like you do. It's like a 55-gallon drum with a handle on it. And this is lodged in there collecting ice, and I'm like, where did this come from? You have a ghost, and he's thirsty. So anyway, I'm MB. I, like I said, 2 kids, 1 husband, 2 cats, and a dog.
And a dog.
The dog is your best friend. You may not have met her yet, but trust me, she is your best friend.
Oh.
That's how she thinks.
All right. This will be out there way after Thanksgiving, but how was your Thanksgiving?
My Thanksgiving was delightful. Thing 1 had COVID. She is recovered. She's almost done with her quarantine. She'll be able to go back to work on Monday. But we set up the computer on the laptop on the end of the table. So she had her dinner while we had our dinner.
Okay.
So we had dinner together.
Was she super symptomatic or was it pretty minor?
No, I think she said she's got a little bit of a lingering cough. She had a little bit of a sore throat. She had a very low fever for a couple days. And she was very tired. She napped like it was her job.
Yeah.
But other than that, knock wood, we were lucky. How was your Thanksgiving?
It was pretty laid back to start.
I like that, to start.
We went grocery shopping the night before at like 8 p.m. to avoid all the crazy people because we didn't do a Thanksgiving dinner. So I did like finger foods. So that was super easy. Plenty of it. And so that was nice. So we did that and watched Adam's Family Values, of course, because I have to watch that every single year because, oh my God, the Thanksgiving play is phenomenal.
It is.
Wednesday. It's my hero. But right after we watched that, I get a call from my mom, who was home alone on Thanksgiving.
Aw.
Well, we invited her over, and I don't know if anybody else did, but she was trying to stay away from people because my brother's kids, there were COVID cases reported at their daycare, so it got shut down. And so she's like, I want to make sure that I don't get anybody sick. And she was like, and frankly, I'm just enjoying being home by myself because my brother went over to have Thanksgiving with his family. And so, all right. I was like, you want me to bring you food? No, I'm eating a salad. Fast food salad. I go, okay. Well, then I guess I get a phone call and she says, which emergency room should I go to? And I'm like, for what? And she said she had gotten up to open the garage door for my brother when he got home from his Thanksgiving dinner, tripped over his dog, and she actually has a fractured arm.
No.
Yep. So he took her to the ER.
As well he should.
Yes. I told my husband he needs to go, because I imagine, and I don't know yet, that she hadn't turned the light on. She was walking to the laundry room in the dark. So I'm like, all right, that's it. You're going to put LED lights like this. He loves LED lights all down our freaking hallway to the garage so she can't trip over a dog anymore.
Oh, well, that's good.
So that was Thanksgiving. We were sitting there waiting to hear her. She was okay. She'd hurt her leg and her arm. And she said, I fell on my face.
Oh, God. Mom.
Why?
No.
But she's okay.
Well, that's good.
Except for a fractured arm. So it's in a sling and a pressure cast and all this. So yesterday, my husband took over like a lap desk that was from my daughter's room. We knew we don't go in there. But we went in there yesterday to her old room and found it. And a mouse, an actual mouse, so she could play Words with Friends. Because I got a text and she's like, I'm feeling sorry for myself because I can't play Words with Friends.
Oh.
And I was like, what do you need? She said, I need a mouse. I'm like, okay,
fair.
We can make that happen. In this house of all houses, we can find a damn mouse.
Yes.
My God, there's so much tech in this house.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, there's 200 old mouses in
I
this house.
used to think we had a lot of old tech in our house, and then I met you, and now I feel so much better. Do you have all the boxes for it?
Yes. I'm like, do you need these? Right? This takes up half of the house. This is where computer tech goes to die. Well, around me it does. But, it's like none of it goes away after it dies, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Or after it's been replaced. It just, you might need a piece. No. Or a board or a button or, I don't know.
I will say he sells off old stuff like randomly, and then he makes, little bits of money off of it. I'm like, okay.
Pin money.
Right. Every little once in a while, he's like, oh, I need to do this thing, and you're freaking out about money. That's me. And so then he just sells a bunch of stuff and then does the thing, and I don't have to stress about the money. Yay!
That sounds like a very good system.
It is a good system. He doesn't like to... It stresses him out when I stress out about money, so he'll do whatever he can to avoid being like, I need money for this. Mm-hmm. You worked with me in something where we were funded. You know a little of how that goes. Like, no, we can't spend money on that. Well, we have a surplus.
We do have a budget that you won't let me even think about spending.
We can't touch it.
So I loved it when we were trading the new people. And it's like, wait, we have a budget? Yes, but you can't spend it. Why not? It's a point of pride.
That's right.
We are self-sufficient.
They gave us money, but we don't need it. That's how I feel.
So, in case this hasn't, we need to put the disclaimer, this is not suitable for work, probably.
It's not sufficient for work.
It's not sufficient, no.
Or children.
Or children.
Delicate ears, as you said last time. Soft ears.
Perhaps your pastor wouldn't want to listen to it.
I don't know. Some cussy pastors.
True.
Cussy nuns.
I've never known a cussy nun, but I haven't known a lot of nuns.
I had a friend who it was part of her, rehab or something like that. Or she worked with her after. Yeah, and we just called her the cussing nun. And she was super cussy. And boy, she was a ball buster. She was like, man, you always knew when you were dealing with her. She was very direct and straightforward, and I was like, okay.
Nice. We also would like to say that if you know of mysteries that you would like us to delve into, or you've encountered monsters or mayhem or mysteries, please reach out to us. You can reach us at mysteriesmonstersmayhem@gmail.com. There's no and in there. We are on Facebook, Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem. And the website is mysteriesmonstersmayhem.com.
Where you can find episodes, but you can find them all over the place. And please like and subscribe and share and follow and, do all those groovy things that help us pop up in the algorithm so more people listen and more people send us stories. Don't you want to hear their stories? You do.
So I got the best tip.
Oh, yeah?
I can't use it yet. So my sister calls me and she's telling me about 8 years ago. And I'm not going to tell the whole story because seriously, I will do it when the story is more developed. So 8 years ago, this kid was home from college on spring break and he disappeared. Mm-hmm. Never seen or heard from again. and they just found the body in a barrel.
Oh, yeah.
Down a well. And she's like, and here's who did it, and here's why they did it. And I was like, so of course I go online to look at all the news, and I was like, sweetie, I can't use this yet because everything you told me is not yet public knowledge.
Oh, no.
So I can't actually say why the Smiths did it if there's no proof that the Smiths did it.
Right.
So once the investigation is complete, I will write it up.
Watch any good movies?
No, I haven't watched any movies, but I have been watching clips of a Britcom called Mrs. Brown's Boys.
Okay.
Have you ever watched it?
No.
Oh my God, it's fucking hysterical. It is so funny. But it's not on any streaming service yet, so you have to go to YouTube. And sometimes you can get whole episodes, and sometimes you just get clips, and sometimes you get outtakes. They were doing a show live, and the main character, Mrs. Brown, takes the little earpiece out where they talk in her ear and tell her what to say. She goes, fuck off, and like throws it over her shoulder. It's actually a man dressed as Mrs. Brown. Okay. So funny. Highly recommend. So what have you watched lately?
I haven't. Okay, so I've been studying.
Well, yes.
Spent a week studying for a final for a big class, but I've been watching Trial by Media as I go. Like when I try and let myself watch something before I go to bed in the early morning hours after I've been studying. But Trial by Media, I think it's called, and each episode is a different. It covered the Jenny Jones episode where it was somebody has a crush on you, and they brought the guy out and they said, and he thought it was a woman who was going to have a crush on him. He was a straight male.
Right.
Yes. And then it was a friend who was male who had a crush on him. And of course, for a show like Jenny Jones, they had him, they're like, well, what do you want to do to him? And stuff like this. And the guy was very humiliated. And so he murdered the person who had a crush on him. It was, what was foul? This show covers like all the media. Obviously, and this is how these people were tried by the media, and by the public ahead of time and stuff. But his dad, the murderer's dad, was a homophobe, and it was like, that's where it came from. And they were still friendly afterwards, and they went out for drinks and stuff. And then he talked to his dad, and the dad was like, oh, well, that's, that's disgusting, and that's humiliating and stuff. And I guess he kind of built that in his head. And on the stand, he had no remorse about that. He was like, well, how would you like it if that lawyer over there said he crush on you? And, and it's like, well, you know what? Most people wouldn't be bothered by it, fuckwit. But
yeah.
But last night I watched the story of the woman who, Arujo, I think was her last name, who they based the movie The Accused on. Mm-hmm. And that one was horrifying. And I might cover that in a future episode. But, so sad. But they had one where there was a immigrant from Guinea, and he came to America to make it good, and he got shot down by, at the time, Rudy Giuliani had started these elite units of cops that walked around in plain clothes, in mass.
Good
there
old
were
Rudy. He's
4
done.
of them. Yeah. And this guy was just getting home at night, and he was trying to get in, and they were like, well, he was peeking around at us. And I'm like, you're 4 big white men in the middle of the night walking down the street toward him. Why do you think he was peeking at you when he was trying to get his door open? 41 shots.
Oh.
Unarmed. So that one was terrible.
That's horrific.
And they all got off.
Of course.
But his mother was dynamic. She was fascinating because she came out from Guinea, and at first she was being treated by the city, and they were putting her in at this penthouse and stuff. And then she was curious about what was going on because there were massive protests about 41 shots for an unarmed man and
trying to get into his own house.
Right. But they were like, well, he's acting suspicious. And it's like, well, he thought you were fucking suspicious. Anyway, yeah, I didn't know all this stuff about when Giuliani took over and what happened. He took over from, what was he? Was he the mayor or the governor? What was he? Mayor.
Yeah.
Oh, anyway, the first, whatever his position was, he took over from the first black mayor or governor or whatever of New York.
Was that Dinkins? David Dinkins?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, he took over, and he was, I guess crime was going down under Dinkins, and then he took over, but it made the news more during that time, right? And so it seemed like it was a more severe problem, so then he was like, yeah, And he started the whole military cop, thing. Ugh, ugly.
Very.
Yeah.
So, switching topics, because that's what we do. There's no segue. There's no transition.
Abrupt switches. That's really how our conversations go anyway.
That usually is. It really usually is. Have you heard Kiefer Sutherland's music?
No, but I love his voice.
He has such a good singing voice.
Really?
It's kind of country. I think it just basically is country.
I guess I can see that.
But he's got such a great stage presence. I think in part because he's an actor.
Well, and the thing about him is he's what I would term sexy ugly from a movie. Jessica Stein's First Kiss or something like that. Because, I mean, he's not ugly.
No, but he's
that's not what sexy ugly means.
He's not traditionally handsome either.
Right. He's not a pretty boy. But he has so much charisma. He always has. There's a draw to him.
Yes.
Yeah, so I can see that. Like stage presence, of course.
And he's got quite a nice voice. I was surprised. It came up when I was watching something on some video, and it lists all the other videos you should watch.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I go down that rabbit hole. And I was like, Kiefer Sutherland, click. And I'm like, oh, it's country, but it's Kiefer Sutherland, and it's kind of good.
But yeah. I haven't listened to, like, Keanu Reeves has a band, I don't know if he still has it, Dog Star, and then the Bacon Brothers performed on Pikes Peak one New Year's, or no, probably not New Year's, for 4th of July. It's moderately impassable, I think, for
yes.
And I've never listened to them, and I like both of them. Well, 3 of them, rather. I should really look up their music. But what if I don't like it? Then I'll be sad, and I can just instead envision them having them. Stephen King has the Muddy...
the Rock Bottom Remainders. But they don't pretend to be good.
No.
Amy Tan is in it, and Dave Barry, and I can't remember who else. Mystery writer, whose name is...
I don't know.
Never going to come up. Never going to rise in my mind. Mystery or thriller writer. But yeah, they just get together and jam and sing. And
they'd probably be really entertaining, though.
I bet.
Dave Barry.
Right?
Come on. I did watch a couple movies because some movies came out at the Red Box.
Oh, so what did you watch?
I keep saying the Red Box. It's like the Google. So I watched a bunch of stupid comedies.
Yay.
So we watched Buddy Games last night.
Games?
Yeah. It has Josh Duhamel, and I think he was a producer on it and stuff like that. And just this cast, the guy from Psych, I can never remember his name.
James Roday?
Yes. Anyway, all these people, Kevin Dillon, Matt Dillon's brother, whatever his name is. Oh. And they play these ridiculous, stupid man games, right? Except, I'll be honest, I looked at Jeff and I was like, I want to do this. This looks like fun. So anyway.
What games are they playing? I'm backing slowly away because I'm like,
I know your face is totally like, and what game is that?
What are the games?
Okay. So at the start of it, they're playing paintball, right?
Okay.
And so one of them, he's a dick. They're both dicks. But anyway, one of them is just overly shooting the other one. And then he's kind of teabagging a sleeping friend later. Just slapping his testicles all over his... It goes on forever. And I'm like, stop. And it's just this sound. Right? Okay. So anyway, the one shoots him with the paintball gun right in the testicle. And he goes flipping up over the thing. He loses the testicle. And then it's like 5 years later, after not having spoken, not having their annual buddy games anymore, the mom of the guy who lost his testicle.
It's only fun until someone loses a testicle.
What did you get for slapping it all over your friend's face?
Right.
So gross.
Anyway,
he's not doing well. He's in a mental institution, and he's lost his second testicle for, I don't even remember the reason, but so he has no testicles, and so anyway, they're having a buddy games to bring him back, after these 5 years. But okay, so it starts, and they're sitting there, and they have to eat corn dogs, right? It's like, all right, you have to eat these corn dogs. As soon as you're done eating this number, then you run up this up these hay bales, and you have to put on one of those, the big
sumo.
Funny considering what we're talking about, but the big plastic balls that you get in, and then you roll. So they get in that and they roll down this ramp.
And who vomits first?
Right. Well, pretty much that happens later. Then they have to crush a watermelon, however they do it, and then they have to. It's like these. I laughed so hard at it that my husband was laughing at me. So it's like these dangling things with electrical current and they have to run through them. So, they're like shrieking and it's hysterical. I don't want to do that part. And then they have to jump on dirt bikes, and like the last one to get there gets one of those mini dirt bikes to race with, like ATVs. It's stupid as hell.
Yeah.
So I laughed a lot.
Does it bring him back?
Well, I'm not going to tell you. That gives away the whole so important plot on this movie. It's not important.
All right.
Did I talk about Chick Fight last time?
No.
I watched something called Chick Fight with Malin Ackerman. I think that's how you say it. I was always saying Malin, but then I saw her introduced as Melon.
Oh, it sounds like you said melon.
Malin Ackerman. She's having all these issues. She loses her restaurant. It gets burned down, and she didn't have insurance, and so, or her cafe. And she gets taken to this underground fight ring that's all women. And they're beating each other's ass. This is a real fight ring, right? And it's their own fight club. And she goes to get a trainer, and it's Alec Baldwin. It's an old drunk.
What a stretch.
Right? It's again, stupid fun. I've just been in the mood for stupid fun.
I get that.
Yeah.
I get that.
So I did watch those.
That sounds good. I just finished Bad Monkeys by Matt Ruff. And he got some kind of endowment from the arts grant to write this book. And I'm like, it's a good book. I don't know. I need an endowment to write this book, but...
All right.
That sounds very terrible of me. He has written some other books that I now want to go look up. And it gets very kind of Inception-y toward the end.
Okay.
Kind of like, wait, which is reality and which is not? And just, how does this, wait, what? Let me back up and read that page again. So it was very interesting because it starts out, this woman is in a police station and she's handcuffed. She's in this little drab room with an orange jumpsuit on and she's handcuffed to the table. And this doctor comes in, the psychiatrist or psychologist comes in, and he's questioning her about what she did. And she's like, I know what I did. I killed a man. And nobody can understand why I killed him, but he was evil. I work for Bad Monkeys and we get rid of people who, are terrible.
Okay.
And I understand that you can't see that he was a terrible person. I understand that. I killed him. I did it. And so it's in the process of the book is her telling the story of how she came to work for this organization. And it's a tiny bit futuristic, but not, it's really good. It's really engaging. And I will confess, I would have walked away from the book liking it a bit better if I hadn't read the author's comments at the end.
Oh, interesting. Sometimes that happens.
He was like, well, it's all right there in the first paragraph. And I went back and I was like, no, it is not.
Liar. Jerk.
And then I'm like, thank you for making me feel stupid for not reading the first paragraph and going, oh, well, it's so obviously this. I'm like, well, then what would be the point of reading the book if I got it all from the first paragraph?
Right. That's kind of a stupid way to go about writing.
Yep.
Yes, we're not making a friend there.
So what have you been reading?
I finished Coconut Cowboy by Tim Dorsey, so I finished that. So then I moved on to The Woman in Black by Susan Hill. So, yeah, I quite liked it. I think it's a novella, a novel. It's very short, but...
Did I ever tell you about the books I found? Sometimes you'll get this recommendation. I subscribe to so many different book sites. Look at all these books you could get for 99 cents or for free today. So it was a whole series of books. And it was I think it was the Tubby Palooza books.
Oh, no.
By Tony Dunbar. And they were mysteries.
Okay.
And I thought, it was like 6 books for $2. And I was like, okay. So either he's done this really nice set and he's going to do something else. So he's bundled them together or else they really suck. So I thought, I'm going to look inside the book. I went to Amazon, look inside the book so I can read, see if I like the writing style. So the second sentence is, I can't remember what the first sentence is, but the second sentence was, his drinking partner in crime, Raisin Partlow, blah, 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 blah. And I went, Raisin Partlow? I have to have this. Not only did I buy it, I sent it to my little family chat. And said to everybody, hey, there's a character in this book named Raisin Partlow. And I'm buying them, and here's the link because they're on sale today. I just thought that just cracked me up. Right. And then I come to find out there's actually, in our family tree, there's a Ransom Partlow. There's not a Raisin, but there's a Ransom. There was also someone named Orange. Like the color. Like the color.
Like the color?
Just like, I don't get it.
I can't think of any, like, great family names right now. I don't like one of my relatives who was a member of the Eastern Band of Cherokee, which the rest of mine are all like Oklahoma, but you know, they split and ran the same origins, but his name was George Washington Shaw. And I enjoyed that. Like, I saw there were a lot of natives named after like presidents like that, you know, or big figures like that. So that was fun because he was one I found on the rolls of the Eastern Band. George Washington Shaw. And the thing is, I'd looked him up because I was like, because I think that's also was common with people who'd been slaves, was they would take on name. And so that's actually what I thought at first. And I was like, oh no, it's another Cherokee. Look at that. Okay. So, but that's like the most interesting name. But you know what? I guess we should go ahead.
Who goes first? I can't remember.
Mwah!
Mwahaha.
And then you go first next time.
All right. Do it. Go. Talk.
All right. Okay. Ready?
What?
Go.
Do it.
Yeah, I said last time. Totally inspired by watching Young Guns and Young Guns 2 with the kids.
Oh, that's right.
Yes. And then I was like, you know what? Wait a second. This qualifies. Billy the Kid totally qualifies for Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem. In fact, I feel it qualifies for all of them because I have 2 mysteries involved with it. And then Mayhem and the Monsters, that would be Lawrence Murphy. All right. So my sources, Legends of America website, Unsolved Mysteries, The History Junkie, BrushyBillRoberts.com, History.com, and The Vintage News. All right. So William Henry McCarty Jr., that's what they believe is his actual real original name, was born November 23rd, 1859, in the Irish slums of New York City. A lot of New York going on with me today, I guess. He moved with his parents to Indiana, then Kansas, and his father died. His mother, Catherine McCarty, developed tuberculosis. So our doctors said, of course, what did they say? Move to Colorado.
Yep.
Like for everybody else. So she moved to Colorado, met a man named William Antrim. They got married. He moved them to New Mexico, where he was he was bartending and stuff like that. Then he got interested in prospecting, and he kind of just disappeared from the family. Was never there, wasn't working. And so Catherine started bringing in boarders to cover funds and support her kids. In 1874, she died from the tuberculosis, despite the dry climate. So Antrim put Billy and his brother in different foster homes, took off and left them. Because, of course, he did. Billy was then 14 or 15 years old. So he took a job in a hotel. He was a dishwasher and waiter. The customers really liked him. His boss liked him. He was going to school. His teachers said he was a good kid. Never gave him any more trouble than anybody else. So just to establish that at the beginning.
Wow. Okay.
Because then, he's a problem child. September 23rd, 1875, begins his criminal career. Some places said it was a prank. Some places said it was actual theft. But he was arrested for taking part in the theft of clothes from a Chinese launderer with a buddy of his named Sombrero Jack. Being just a kid, actually a really scrawny little kid, he actually broke out by climbing up the chimney. And at that point became a fugitive from the law.
Oh.
So he spent his time in Arizona for a while. He took hands as a ranch hand, a sheep farmer. He was a teamster at a timber camp in charge of moving the lumber. And his first murder occurred 2 years later, then 1877.
So he was 17.
Yes.
Man.
16 or 17, depending on, what month. I found 2 different claims on these websites for which was his first murder. So either it was a shooting in a saloon, or it was a blacksmith at the army post where he worked. The sawmill and all of that was on an army post.
Oh.
And there was a blacksmith that was bullying him hardcore. Grown-ass man bullying a child who was working there. His name was Frank Windy Cahill. And he constantly bullied him. One day, August 17th, he took it too far. They had an argument. Cahill threw him down to the ground. Billy pulled his gun and shot him. So that one has more details, so I imagine that really was the first. Okay, if you've seen the Young Guns film, which their films, they're just so full of pretty men. Just watch it.
Pretty boys at this point.
You know that he kept although they were all in their like 20s and 30s playing boys.
Yes, but the first time I saw it, it was...
Oh, yeah. Whereas I saw it as a teenager and pretty much fell in love with all of them. So
yeah.
But in the movie, especially Young Guns 2, they stress that he had large wrists and small hands. And that's how he was able to get out of handcuffs. Well, it's true.
Oh.
He really could just slip out of handcuffs because his wrists were big enough. They wouldn't do it tight enough. And he could just slip it right over his hands. Just floop.
Oh.
Yeah. That's a really good advantage if you're going to be a gunslinger, an outlaw,
if you're going to be in
cattle
handcuffs,
rustler, which he did for, off and on. Now more of a fugitive, he wandered until he ran into Jesse Evans, who had his own little gang. They called themselves the Boys. It was also most usually called the Jesse Evans Gang. So being alone on the frontier, he had his horse stolen by some Apache, all this stuff. He joins up, it's a survival thing. He's a kid alone. He joins up. The Evans gang is what actually got him involved in the Lincoln County War, which is what Young Guns 1 was about. Background on the Lincoln County War starts with Lawrence Murphy, which is played by Jack Palance in his ever breathy greatness.
I love Jack Palance.
His voice and Lawrence Murphy was born in Ireland. He immigrated to New York. They all immigrated to New York. Signed up to fight in the Civil War. Ultimately found himself stationed at Fort Stanton, New Mexico in 1866. So here he teamed up with a fellow veteran, Emil Fritz, and they started a store and brewery at the fort called L.G. Murphy and Company. He made many connections via his military service and the first store and landed government contracts to supply the fort and the nearby Mescalero Apache Reservation agency with goods. Then, his life as a criminal, but of course a highbrow, politically supported criminal, began.
Yes. White collar.
Yep. Started scamming farmers and ranchers by selling them land that didn't actually belong to them. They're just taking these plots that nobody owned and selling them. And then when the farmers inevitably were foreclosed upon because they couldn't make their payments, Fritz and Murphy would take all their cattle, all their produce. That's what they would use to supply their government contracts and take the land and resell it.
How cold-bloodedly brilliant.
Yes. They were protected by the Santa Fe Ring. And the Santa Fe Ring was this ring of powerful politicians and political figures and just, rich moneyed figures, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they didn't have any legal issues. They helped him get commissioned as a district probate judge in Lincoln, New Mexico, which was the Lincoln County seat, and which is where all this happened. Lincoln County was actually the biggest county in the U.S. at the time. Covered most of New Mexico territory.
Oh, wow.
So they were the only ones around supplying things. He did end up getting himself into trouble because he had a short temper and he tried to shoot a captain on the base. Bearing in mind, Murphy was no longer military. He was also failing to fill his contracts, was scamming the Apache and not actually giving them the goods that he was supposed to be providing them, which, how many times has that happened?
Right.
He was price gouging, because of course he could, with no competitors, really, and he was losing money. So they were just, their business was rapidly going downhill. 1873, Fritz developed kidney disease, sold his half of the business to Murphy, and he went back home to Germany, where he was from.
As one does when one has kidney disease.
Right? Like, I'm going to go way back home, which probably, would have been on a ship and taken a really long, unpleasant time.
Yeah.
Sounds like fun. Murphy was kicked off the fort, but didn't lose his government contract, so he and another ex-soldier, James Dolan, opened up the Murphy and Dolan Mercantile and Banking, no longer on the base, but in Lincoln. Got more government contracts, but these were with Fort Sumner, a different fort. He took in a bunch of criminals, including the Evans gang, the Jesse Evans gang, and used them to rustle cattle for him. So instead of buying from actual ranchers, he was taking in stolen cattle. Yeah, he was a great guy.
Yeah,
wonderful.
What a peach.
The business became so large and such a monopoly that it just was called the House by everybody. And the House included all of the dirty players that were helping him out, all the main players, including Sheriff Brady, who was the area sheriff. Complete monopoly in New Mexico territory. Then we get to John Tunstall. He was born in England in 1853, immigrated to British Columbia, where his father had a business, then moved to the U.S. to become a sheep rancher. He tried California first, learned that New Mexico was way cheaper to live in, for reasons.
Even back then.
Right?
California was so expensive.
Met Alexander McSween and became a cattle rancher instead. Eventually, he and McSween, who was a lawyer but was also a rancher already, he already had cattle, opened up H.H. Tunstall and Company, which was same thing as Murphy and Dolan's Mercantile, and it was right down the way from their Mercantile. They were supported by cattle baron John Chisholm, who was a rather large figure at that time with his cattle. So Murphy and Dolan, owning pretty much everyone and everything else that was around there, they didn't like having their toes stepped on. It wasn't healthy competition, which is how Tunstall and McSween viewed it, right?
Right.
It was an attack. So,
well, yes, when you...
Yeah,
you
have a monopoly, you have it.
Well, and it's not even a monopoly you've earned, it's a monopoly you've stolen. And gotten
and
ill-gotten
wheedled
gains yes, and
yep. So at first he just kept taking them to court, causing a bunch of issues legally, but he became more desperate when that didn't work. Now, Tunstall was much younger than he's depicted in the movie. He was in his 20s when he did this. Dolan tried to challenge Tunstall to a gunfight, tried to get him to start the gunfight, like prodding, and Tunstall was like, no, I'm not going to fight you. He did end up then taking in protection. That's when he started bringing in these kind of gunslingers, including Billy the Kid. Oops. And then I lose my place for protection because he knew they were going to come after him. So some of the people under Murphy's and therefore Dolan's thumb were the territorial governor Axtell.
Oh my God.
The territorial attorney general. And of course, like I already said, Sheriff Brady.
Right.
Enter Emil Fritz's life insurance. Fritz died in 1874. The estate hired McSween to collect his funds from his estate. And McSween refused to give the money to the executor once he got it because he knew that the executor, who was dirty, and was just going to hand it over to Murphy. But in turn, he then kept it. And I'm like, okay, well, it's not yours either. So I don't know if he kept it like with the intention of trying to get it to somebody proper, or if he straight up just kept it because this was a competitor.
So who should it have gone to?
I don't know. It doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know if he had. He wouldn't have gone back to Germany if he didn't have family there, right?
One would think.
So yeah. Anyway, he kept it, and that was just another issue. So 4 years later, there's a court order concerning this and other issues because they claimed that there were like tax issues and that Tunstall and McSween owed money, and so they owed him 8 horses or something like this.
Good God.
Of course. So they get a court order to take McSween's things over this issue, but somehow they also get something to take Tunstall's, and Tunstall was never involved in this. He wasn't a lawyer. He wasn't even there when it happened. So Sheriff Brady put together a posse because the men, of course, refused to hand over their stuff. And that posse included members of the John Kinney Gang, the Seven Rivers Warriors, and the Jesse Evans Gang. There aren't reports, like I couldn't find when this transition happened, when Billy the Kid left the Jesse Evans Gang to go to Tunstall's side, because the Jesse Evans Gang was on Murphy's side. But he at that time had been befriended by Tunstall. Jesse Evans Gang, actively during all this battle, Murphy's men had been rustling cattle from Tunstall, McSween, and Chisholm.
Right.
They were stealing their cows when they couldn't get their property and get it all handed over to them. And that's, of course, what they were selling. Billy the Kid felt Tunstall was the only man who treated him like a human being.
Okay.
And so he went over to his side and he was defending him against his old cohorts in the Jesse Evans Gang. February 18th, 1878, the posse murdered Tunstall while Tunstall's farmhands watched. They were too far away. They were bringing in the last of the cattle or whatever, or the horses. So from a distance, they see him get shot in the back of the head. So the witnesses were Dick Brewer, who is in the movie. The rest of these aren't. John Middleton, Henry Newton Brown, Robert A. Widman, Fred Wade, and Billy the Kid.
Okay.
And at that point, this was somebody he felt had treated him straight, and he was really, really bothered by it and swore that he was going to get the killers. Under the direction of McSween, Justice of the Peace John Wilson deputized a posse of men that would become known as the Regulators. With Dick Brewer as their first leader. Over a period of 5 months, it sounds like it would have taken so much longer, but 5 months, the posse would include Dick Brewer, John Middleton, Henry Newton Brown, Charlie Bowdry, who dies in the first movie but did not in real life die at the incident, Jose Chavez E. Chavez, George Coe, Frank Coe, Tom O'Fowler, Jim French, William McCloskey, Frank McNabb, Vicente Romero, Eugenio Salazar, and Josiah Doc Skurlock, who was Kiefer Sutherland in the movie, Francisco Zamora, John Scroggins, Tiger Sam Smith, and Dirty Steve Stevens, who was also in the movie.
Dirty Steve.
Dirty Steve. We always called him Spittin' Steve because he's always chewing tobacco in the movie. So like as a teenager, he was Spittin' Steve. Imagine my surprise when he turned out to be kind of hot.
Who played him?
It's not Dylan McDermott. It's Dermot Mulroney. I always have to do that with their names. Yes!
That must have been a really early role for him.
It wasn't. He's gross. He's dirty all the time. He's spitting. He's racist. He's, So anyway, like, he was not on my radar whatsoever.
Right.
And of course, now he's gone on to still be successful when a lot of them aren't necessarily still successful. So, the Regulators had been deputized to serve lawful warrants against the men who'd killed Tunstall. but it quickly went off the rails.
Well,
Considering these were men between the ages of 14 and 30 years old who were suddenly given a really huge amount of power after having been gunslingers and cowpokes and, you know. So a constable, Martinez, was actually assigned to help them. Brady arrested him, Billy, and Fred Waite not long after Tunstall's to try and prevent them from serving these warrants.
Oh.
And they were released days later. And then I never heard anything else about Martinez. So I assume that he was like, forget this noise. On their first hunt, they found Buck Morton and Dick Lloyd, as well as an uninvolved deputy named Frank Baker. A gunfight ensued, and everywhere it was described as a running 5-mile gunfight. And I'm like, yeah, that makes her a great scene mentally.
That's like a car chase now.
Right. And like probably nobody got hit, right? Because you're just shooting all over the place. Dick Lloyd got away, but Morton surrendered on the condition that Baker be allowed to go free since he had nothing to do with any of it. He just happened to be riding with them that day. Brewer agreed. But several days later, as they're moving them back, a couple of the other regulators killed them, right?
Ooh.
So McCloskey, one of the regulators, was friends with Morton. He tried to stop it. In the movie, they make it look like he's a double agent or whatever. But honestly, he was just friends with Morton. Okay. He was like, no, we told them that we're taking them back to serve the warrants. So the regulators killed him too. This is actually called the Blackwater Creek Massacre. It had a name, even though there were 3 people shot. The regulators actually went back and tried to pin the murders on Morton, who was one of the people who'd killed Tunstall. They said he killed McCloskey to get away, and that the regulators then had to shoot him and Baker down as they fled. But no one believed them, because they all, knew that Morton and McCloskey were friends, and Morton would not have chosen his one friend out of the regulators to shoot and kill and get away.
Yeah.
Plus, I think there were 10 bullets in Morton and 5 in Baker, and they didn't say how many in McCloskey. I think his was like one shot to take him out. On the same day, but separate from this incident, 2 of the other men involved in Tunstall's murder, Tom Hill and Jesse Evans, and I'm going to keep stressing him. He comes up a lot, right? And he's going to come up later.
Okay.
Were shot by a sheep drover while trying to rob him. Hill died. Jesse Evans was severely wounded, and they took him to Fort Stanton for medical treatment, where he was arrested on a federal warrant for stealing stock from an Indian reservation. Sheriff Brady, having completely lost control of the situation, he goes to Thomas Benton Catrone, the territorial attorney general, who again is part of Murphy's little Santa Fe ring, and he asked for help. So Catrone went to Axtell, the territorial governor, to do something about it. Axtell decreed that Wilson's appointment as justice of the peace had been illegal, which meant the regulators were not, in fact, legally deputized, which meant the killings they'd done were no longer covered. So now they're full-blown fugitives. All of them. There's no legal protections for their actions. They, of course, continue trying to serve the warrants, because they're like, nope, we're going to get them. Axtell also revoked the deputy U.S. Marshal, so that meant Sheriff Brady was the only law in the entire area in New Mexico territory.
I'm sure he wasn't planning to abuse that authority.
Of course not. Like he wasn't already. April 1st, 1878, several of the regulators, including Billy, hid behind Tunstall's store and ambushed Brady on the street, killing him and another deputy, and I think wounding another deputy. April 4th, 3 days later, 1878, the regulators went after Andrew Buckshot Roberts at Blazer's Mill, a trading post. And that's the one where he hides in the outhouse in the movie. Roberts is killed, but not before killing Dick Brewer and injuring Middleton, Skurlock, one of the Coe brothers, and Billy. Like, he really was a good shot. Frank McNabb took over the regulators when Dick Brewer died. But he then died less than a month later, April 29th, during a shootout with the new sheriff, Pepin.
Oh my God.
The Jesse Evans gang, the Seven Rivers Warriors at the Fritz Ranch. So at that point, guess who took over? It's not Billy the Kid. He never ran the regulators. Doc Skurlock takes over.
Oh my God.
He was their last leader. The next day, 4 members of the Seven Rivers gang are killed. It's not claimed this was by the regulators. It's just considered coincidental. That same day, the regulators, now being known as the Ironclad, some called them, because, they just kept living. That one shootout, how many of them got injured? Only 1 died. So they got into a gunfight with Dolan's men and some U.S. Army cavalry members.
It was only a flesh wound.
It's just a flesh wound. George Coe wounded one of the cavalry members, and guess what that meant? Now the federal government was after the regulators. July 19th, 1878, McSween and the regulators, including Billy, come under siege by the new sheriff, George Pepin, Dolan's men, Murphy, the Seven Rivers gang, in 2 different locations. So it was the house, but it was also the store. But I think they were near each other, Inside both of these places, There were the regulators, McSween, his wife, 20-some regulators, Mexican regulators as well, it said, and vaqueros, Mexican cowboys. The siege lasted 3 days, with one man on each side being shot in that time. Then the U.S. Army arrived. The cavalry came in, led by Colonel Dudley. They brought cannons with them. Right. The siege lasted 2 more days. Then they set McSween's house on fire. So when people fled the building, they just picked them off as they ran out of the building. And a lot of these people weren't involved in any of this.
Yeah, like the guy's wife.
Right. And there were actually women and children. They were given safe passage out once they set the house on fire. Susan McSween and the women and children who were there. The men weren't allowed to come out. McSween was one of the ones killed.
Okay.
Susan then retained a lawyer to continue his fight. The lawyer was murdered within a month. I didn't hear what happened to her after that. I don't know if she got to keep at least the McSween property. I know that Dolan ended up buying Tunstall's property.
It's like, why would you even get involved with this? With any side of it. Any
right?
Piece
and be like,
of it.
Peace out, Susan.
Dude, I got shit to do.
It's like they didn't understand how deep Murphy and Dolan were and how much they truly ran.
And how far they were willing to go.
Absolutely.
Because it sounds like they would just keep throwing people at the problem, and if the people were dead, they would just go... It didn't
matter. They were just a bunch of criminals, too.
They would just go up a rung and get more people.
And a lot of it was like they would have fellow veterans from, the military because they were veterans. This is all national news at this point. It's become completely unregulated. The president is freaking out because this territory is just brutal and violent all the time. September 1878, President Rutherford B. Hayes removes Axtell from office for corruption.
Oh, nice.
And he appoints Lew Wallace as the governor in his stead. Wallace came close. He actually almost just went in and declared martial law right off, which might not have been the worst.
I was going to say, why not?
But if you declare martial law back then, isn't it the cavalry that comes in?
Oh, well, yeah. I don't know, probably.
But the president wanted peace, and he said everybody just needs to be peaceful. So on November 13th, 1878, Wallace offers amnesty to everyone involved in the Lincoln County War if they're not already under indictment. But he excludes Billy the Kid because at this point, Billy the Kid has become quite notorious out of everybody for whatever reason. It said that he was very charismatic. It's also said that he had quickly shifting moods. So Emilio Estevez's depiction of him is actually pretty accurate, where people couldn't help but be drawn to him, but at the same time he had a very short temper and would do these stupid knee-jerk things. Again, he was a teenager. I mean, looking back at that, it's like no wonder you got a bunch of teenage boys full of testosterone running around. Of course shit's gonna go wrong.
Mitigating influence.
Yeah. So he had become a figurehead, and so he could not be pardoned. Even though, again, he never actually led the regulators. Unlike the movie. I mean, in that it's kind of played on, like he thought he was leading it, but everybody else was leading it. But still, they kind of made it look like he was leading it. Lincoln County War was considered officially over at this point.
Okay.
Murphy, who had been diagnosed with cancer the year before, 1877, dies shortly after they burn out the McSweens in October 1878. He's 47 years old. And actually, during this time, he started all this shit. But then he, during this, ends up selling his shares off to Dolan and another person they were partnered with, and he's traveling back and forth to Santa Fe to get cancer treatments. So he wasn't even there for everything, but it did say he was there when the big siege happened. In March 1879, Governor Wallace met with Billy to discuss a deal. Wallace hoped Billy could help bring down several of the higher-ups in the Lincoln County incident. Ultimately, Billy did agree to testify as long as he received amnesty. It took him several days to come back and say, all right, I'll do it. Wallace insisted he agree to be arrested to put on a show. So it was a show arrest, was what it was supposed to be, and that he stay in the jail until he'd completed his testimony. So Billy says, okay. His testimony helped indict John Dolan, but the DA refused to follow Wallace's order to free Billy afterwards. It was actually the DA who went back on it, not Wallace, but then Wallace doesn't make it happen. Once again, he gets out of his handcuffs and escapes. He's like, well, I'm done. And so then he goes. Dolan ended up getting off with the help of his dirty political friends, by the way. He lived until 20 more years, till 1898, at which point he died at the same age Murphy had died, 47 years old.
Wow.
But he got to be completely unscathed by this in those 20 years.
Yeah.
But then he was in his 20s during all this, which is crazy because he was a military veteran. Billy formed a gang now called the Rustlers, or Billy the Kid's gang, creatively. The gang was made up of Tom O'Folliard, Charlie Bowdry, Tom Pickett, Dirty Dave Rudabaugh, and Billy Wilson. And during this time, they made their way being thieves and cattle rustlers, as you do. It was during this time that Billy made friends with Pat Garrett, who was just a bartender at the time. And then it wouldn't be long before he became elected sheriff of Lincoln County, and then he was ordered to hunt down Billy the Kid. Now, I don't think they were as bestie as they were made out to be in anything. I didn't find anything indicating that. Right. They were just pals, you know. I don't think he ever rode with him and rustled and all that stuff, but I'm not sure. I decided not to look more into Pat Garrett because this was long enough already. In the meantime, Billy the Kid kept trying to get his pardon. He kept writing to Wallace and being, I want my pardon. He was far too notorious, of course. He was in all the local papers and the national papers. No way was he going to get pardoned. December 15th, 1880, Governor Wallace offered a $500 reward on Billy the Kid's head. Pat Garrett starts going after him hardcore. He's getting pressure. He needs to find Billy and put a stop to his exploits. No matter what he did, he failed repeatedly to capture Billy. There's trap after trap after trap. They laid a trap for Billy in Stinking Springs, New Mexico. They killed several of his gang members, but Billy got away. I think that's when Bowdry died, and then the other person he gets buried next to. So that's when Charlie finally dies. He basically died the way Doc Scurlock died in the second Young Guns. That was Charlie Bowdry. Yeah, he just got... He went out, got shot down while the rest of them got away. Days later, Garrett finds him again. They surround the outlaws. There's a one-day siege. Dave Rudabaugh holds up the white flag. They surrender. December 23rd, 1880, Billy the Kid is arrested. His April trial lasted 1 day. He stayed in prison during that time. Like, why didn't you escape again? But maybe he was in a better jail cell. It did say they moved him to like 3 different jails. Like, they kept moving him. Maybe it's like, he's going to figure out how to get out. Let's do this next. Kind of like when my son, as a toddler, kept finding ways to, A, break into all the child protected stuff. Yep. B, he learned how to pick a lock. Because my office was the one that became my daughter's room later, and there was a Jack and Jill bathroom between his bedroom and mine. And when I was working in my office, he would come in and play on the floor. Right. And so I would keep the bathroom locked, so if I was like really focusing, he couldn't go into the bathroom and get hurt. So then I'd pick the lock every time to go into the bathroom because it didn't lock from the bedroom, it locked from the bathroom. And so I'm sitting there and I hear him messing with it, turn around, and that little punk popped it open. He also learned how to get out the front door. He broke out my front window one time, and I'm doing the dishes thinking he's safe in here playing. And he's just calling in. I'm calling out, hey, Bob, how you doing? You know, and he's, I'm good, Mom. And he's responding to me. And then I hear like this big cacophony and him crying or whatever. And I come in here and he's out front. He's just been calling in the window every time I call out to him. So anyway, totally reminds me of Billy the Kid getting out of prison over and over and over again. Judge Warren Bristol sentences him to hanging because he's convicted for the murder of Sheriff Brady. That's what they press the charges for. So his hanging is due to occur May 13th. So he slips out of his handcuffs while he's in the outhouse. Of course. He shoots Deputy James Bell. They think somebody hid a gun in the outhouse for him. Then he goes inside, steals Deputy Robert Ollinger's 10-gauge shotgun, double barrel, waits for Ollinger. When Ollinger, having heard the shots, comes running out of another building, Billy the Kid yells out, "Hello, Bob!" Bob looks up at the second floor where Billy the Kid's sticking out of the window, and Billy the Kid shoots him with his own rifle. He then uses a pickaxe to remove his leg shackles, steals the weapons from the jail, so he has himself a nice little arsenal, and steals a horse, and he escapes. On July 14th, 1881, Pat Garrett tracks Billy the Kid to his friend Peter Maxwell's place in Old Fort Sumner. While Garrett is inside questioning Maxwell, Billy comes to get some meat, unaware of what's going on. He sees a shadow. There's something, it's dark in Maxwell's room, and he calls out, "Key&S, Key&S, who is that? Who's there?" And Garrett shoots him twice. They bury him the next day between Charlie Bowdry and Tom O'Folliard. That's a quick burial. He was 21 years old.
Damn.
All of this between age of 14 and 21.
Wow.
So people like to say that Billy the Kid killed 21 men, one for each year of his life. Other reports say there's more deaths, but historians think he killed 9. All this. But technically, he's the serial killer.
People love a good story.
They do. And
whether or not there's
he
any
got
basis
so
in
romanticized.
reality.
Probably because he was a kid amongst men, you know, like, they loved him. But they think only 4 of those were really on his own. The rest were with everybody. Mm-hmm. You know, like the dude in the outhouse that they killed and everything. Who knows whose bullet actually killed him. So he probably killed 4 people directly. But that isn't the end. I present the mysteries. In 1948, a man named Joe Hines, while dealing with a probate investigator for his dead brother's property, claims to be Jesse Evans, the head of the Jesse Evans gang. Oh. The dude who got shot during all of this and then got arrested when he went to get medical help. He tells the investigator, William Morrison, that he changed his name after getting out of prison in 1882. So I really am this dude's brother. I really am owed his stuff. And that his old friend Billy the Kid, also still alive, is going by the name of Ollie L. Brushy Bill Roberts. So Morrison, intrigued, starts writing to Roberts, who's down in Texas. And at this point, they were in Missouri, I believe. And Roberts eventually, during their correspondence, says, okay, yes, I'm Billy the Kid. Roberts asked Morrison to help him get the pardon he'd been promised so long ago. Boy, he wanted that pardon. Some of the things that make it seem like Roberts was, in fact, Billy the Kid. He had scars that matched exactly Billy the Kid's known injuries. Okay. He was a heavily scarred man. He was able to show that because of his large wrists and small hands, he could slip right out of any handcuffs they put him in. He claimed that Garrett had actually shot a man named Billy Barlow, and which is why they buried Billy the Kid so quickly the next day, because it wasn't him. And whether he did that because they were friends, or more likely because he'd already shot 2 other men trying to get Billy the Kid, right, and now had shot another person who was wrong and decided, I want the pressure to come off. You run. I'm going to say I killed you. I'm done with you. That's what I think was probably more like it. Of course, I haven't read his book. Pat Garrett wrote a book, but it's probably not true at all. And it probably made him look real good throughout, right? Like really awesome.
Well, yeah.
And actually, newspapers during that time had said, yeah, it was a Mexican man with a beard that got shot. That's who they buried. There was like the Sun-Times or something like that said it that week. Like the week of the actual murders, the newspaper was saying it wasn't Billy the Kid. Morrison hunted down several Billy the Kid's known associates, most of them from the Jesse Evans gang. There were 5 signed affidavits stating Roberts was Billy. I just find it fascinating they were all leading like normal lives and able to be tracked down at this point. While meeting with the New Mexico governor, Thomas J. Mabry, Roberts had a small stroke, overwhelmed by all the press, and they were mocking him. Mabry was mocking him. Wow. They didn't believe it was him. He was unable to convince them of his identity. He went back home to Eco, Texas, and died December 27th, 1950 of a heart attack without having gotten his pardon. He doesn't deserve a pardon. Okay. Though Morrison always believed Roberts was really Billy the Kid, he was never able to prove it. He died believing wholeheartedly that it was Billy the Kid after their talks. According to Unsolved Mysteries, in 1990, a photo comparison was conducted at the Laboratory for Vision Studies in the Advanced Graphic Laboratory at the University of Texas, Austin by Dr. Alan Bovick. It compared a photo of Roberts to the infamous tintype of Billy the Kid, which is that same one that made everybody say he was left-handed because he's holding the rifle in his left hand. But if you look, he's got a handgun pointed toward his right hand, not for cross draw. So he was right-handed. He was just holding it with his left hand. Anyway, that same tintype, because that's the only one that's been legitimized. This evidence was presented to a chancery judge of Arkansas's 12th Judicial District and an attorney who all stated that there was strong, substantial evidence that the 2 men were one and the same. It's been claimed this can't be true because Roberts had been tracked from birth by official actions and documents as Oliver Roberts, including his World War I draft card, marriages, jobs. Originally known as Oliver Pleasant Roberts, he was also several years younger than Billy the Kid. However, Brushy Bill Roberts said he was a cousin of Oliver P. Roberts, not Ollie P. himself, and thus not the person with a different proven history. Brushy Bill Roberts, actually known as William Henry Roberts, again, William Henry McCarty, stated that Oliver was killed on the trail and found by his cousin, who upon trying to return the belongings to his aunt was mistaken for her son and said, all right. Because he was a farmer, he had property, he said, I'll take over his name. So he took his cousin's identity. This would have been around 1910, and evidence actually supports this. I actually ordered the book from the BrushyBillRoberts.com because there's a ton of research, and I'm curious. Because they actually track, like, confirmed sightings and stuff like that of what he went, and it actually makes sense, and it all matches what Brushy Bill Roberts said. Oh. And again, because Oliver P. Roberts was just a peaceful farmer, there's no reason for the massive scars Brushy Bill Roberts was able to show. So he also knew a lot of details about Billy the Kid's actions through the years. They've been corroborated. Interestingly, Roberts had appeared at one point with a man named J. Frank Dalton, who claimed in 1948 to actually be Jesse James, not having been killed when he was said to have been killed. Throughout his time, Billy the Kid had gone by several aliases, including William Antrim and William Henry Bonney, aka William H. Bonney, which is the one you hear about the most.
Right.
So I leave you with those two mysteries. Did Pat Garrett kill Billy the Kid or an innocent man? And was Brushy Bill Roberts actually Billy the Kid?
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
That's a biggie. It's like, holy sheep shit.
So much.
Although I will say farmers do collect their share of scars. Generally, they don't
right,
look
but
like
not
gunshots.
Bullets, scars to the torso. And
Yeah.
I feel like scarred hands and legs and arms and, places where they hit themselves with something.
Yeah. All right. So I am going to talk about the first title I saw for this was The Phantom Killer. And I was like, all right.
Cool.
But then I got the more romantic name, the Texarkana Moonlight Murders.
Oh.
So my sources include Insider.com, Wikipedia. Do we even have to say Wikipedia every time? Because it's such a good jumping off point. It points you to so many different things. And also Texas Monthly, because this happened right on the border of Arkansas and Texas.
It's not the town that dreaded Sundown or anything, is it?
Exactly. It is.
Yay!
It's what that movie is based on.
Okay, because I thought that was Texarkana.
It was. It is. It began in the spring, and this isn't going back very far for me because I've been stuck in 1911 forever. So in the spring of 1946, 8 people were attacked in 10 weeks and 5 died. The first time it said the killer struck every 3 weeks, and then I researched a little further, and I'm like, well, there was one set of killings that were exactly 3 weeks apart. Ish. Yeah, they were 3 weeks-ish apart. They weren't, yeah. So
he wasn't looking at his calendar and
tick, tick, tick. Now, it's time, honey. I'm going out for a pack of cigarettes and
murder
a murder
time.
do, murder time.
Oh, no.
So, the first... Yes, you didn't know there was going to be a musical interlude. And now that you've heard me hum, you wish there hadn't been. Ooh. So, February 22nd, 1946 is when the first attack happened. So, it was near midnight, and Jimmy Hollis and Mary Jean Larry were parking. Basically, they were in the car on Lover's Lane. Mm-hmm.
Sluts.
We all know what they was doing out there. So someone, and this was what really I found very interesting because this one piece doesn't come back in later. Someone with a white hood over their face came up and knocked on the window and shone a flashlight through the window into their eyes, ordered them out of the car. And this was really, it just got so weird because he ordered them both out of the car and made Hollis take his pants off. It was like, take your fucking pants off. That was the quote. Right?
All right.
Made the man take his pants off.
So he couldn't run?
Then, I don't know. I think I could run without my pants on.
Right? Freer.
Perhaps a little faster.
Especially like women's pants, right? I mean, in that case, you'd be like, woo!
Motivation. You've taken my pants and you have a gun. I could think that would give me a little extra speed. So then he struck him in the head with the gun, and he hit him so maybe, but he hit him so hard the guy thought he had been shot. It was the sound of his skull cracking because he had actually fractured his skull.
Damn, yeah, how hard you have to hit a skull to fracture?
Yeah, right. So then he told Larry to run. So she started to run, and he's like, no, not that way. Run that way. Told her to run in a different direction. So she ran, and she came to another car, but it was abandoned. Oh. There's nobody in it.
Damn it. And
he caught her there and, like, yelled at her for running away.
It's cray-cray.
Right? Then it was like, why did you run? And then he knocked her down and assaulted her and released her again. So she made it to a nearby house to call the police. Now, what is here's the thing. She tried to flag down a passing car and they wouldn't stop.
Back then, that's kind of surprising.
Yes. But she did get to a farmhouse or a house nearby. Hollis, meanwhile, regained consciousness and did flag down a car. So they'll stop for a man with no pants.
Wasn't a car of women?
Didn't say.
Who's this now?
So they both were hospitalized for several days. The only part of the description they could agree on was that the assailant was around 6 foot tall. They couldn't agree on whether he was black or white. The woman, Lorraine, said he was black. Hollis said he was white, but perhaps deeply tanned.
Huh.
That's really weird.
And there's no races in between.
No.
You're either black or white.
No. in Texarkana, there's nothing else.
No.
Anyhow, the police at the time suspected that they both knew who the assailant was, but for some reason wouldn't say.
Why?
No, never any reason. That was February. So March 24th, 1946. So this is like a month later. Richard L. Griffin and Polly Ann Moore, again boyfriend and girlfriend, again parking, were killed that night. They weren't discovered till the next morning. They were the car had been parked near a night spot called Club Dallas.
Ooh, that's creative.
That fancy.
Club Dallas. That
fancy.
Makes me be like, ooh, ball.
They both had been shot. They were both fully clothed.
Oh.
But there was evidence that they might have been shot outside the car and then placed back in it. Which doesn't make any sense. And there were no solid leads. So then, April 13th, second double murder. There was Betty Jo Booker, who was 15 years old. Okay, the description of her just made me smile. She was playing saxophone with her band at the VFW.
Aw,
I was like, how sweet is that? And they were called like the Rhythmaires. I was like, and a friend of hers, whose name was Paul Martin, who was 17, picked her up at 1:30 a.m. when the gig was over to take her home. There was no indication that they were dating, so that they were parking. Because I'm like, maybe this is a sex thing. Maybe it's somebody who's, got a... And they speculate
or those are just easy to get.
They're a little distracted. They suspect that this might be where that urban legend, the man with the hook hand, came from. Well, anyway, so he picked her up at 1:30. So 1:30 in the morning. His body was found about 6:30 in the morning by some family. It was outside, mom, dad, and son. And he'd been shot 4 times, but possibly on the opposite side of the road from where he was found. Because there's like a big pool of blood on one side.
Drag.
And Booker's body, Betty Jo's body, was found 5 hours later, 2 miles away behind a tree. She'd been shot twice.
Okay.
So there's this...
I just realized which one this is in the Talent Dreads Sundown, because I think they do something with the saxophone.
Well, the saxophone does and doesn't come into it. The car, Martin's car, was found kind of not near either body. The keys were still in it. The authorities were never sure who was shot first, and it appears that they both put up quite a struggle.
Good for them.
Right? But there's no evidence of canoodling. That was totally my word. During the investigation, one of the things was they hadn't found the saxophone. So they were looking for somebody, and they actually did bring a guy in who was trying to who's trying to pawn a saxophone a few months later. But then it turned out when they went back and searched again, the saxophone was in the woods near where they found her body, but it was like in the underbrush.
Okay.
It wasn't like right next to her, and they just didn't see it. It was... So then in May 3rd, 1946, Final Crimes. This is the... So, it's a farmer and his wife. It's Virgil and Katie Starks. And they live 10 miles outside of Texarkana. So this isn't right in town. And they were not out parking. Virgil's in the living room listening to his favorite radio program. I was really disappointed it did not say what the radio program was. Because I'm like, please, bitches, inquiry minds want to know.
What were they listening to?
And she was getting ready for bed. She actually was laying on the bed in her nightgown. And she thinks she hears something in the backyard. So she asks him, Virgil, to turn the radio down. Well, then she hears breaking glass and she runs in, and he's been shot through the back of the head twice through a window. And when she comes in the room, apparently he had been starting to get out of the chair when he was shot. So she actually sees him fall back in the chair.
Oh, wow.
She runs over, realizes he's been shot in the head, and he's dead, Jim. So, she runs to the phone, which is that old-fashioned on-the-wall crank phone.
Yay.
And she's trying to call for help. She gets shot twice in the face while she's trying to call for help.
Close range? Long range?
Through the window.
Through the window, okay.
They called it, I can't even tell you how many times they used the phrase river of blood. Because first she runs back to the bed, after she's been shot, she runs back to the bedroom. I think she was trying to get out of that. It had this whole long explanation of her running around the house. But eventually she hears the guy trying to come in through one of the windows, and she runs back through the house, gets out the front door, runs across a field. The police later said there was such a river of blood and teeth on the floor of the house. He's like, how is she even alive? Oh. So she runs across a field to her, I don't know if it was her brother and sister-in-law or sister and brother, somebody, relatives across the road. They weren't home. She runs to the neighbor's house in her nightgown, bleeding, teeth falling out. And they jump in the car and take her to the hospital.
Well, thank God. Because probably she sounded like...
No, she couldn't have, because she never fully lost consciousness on the way to the hospital. And the police, not interrogated, but questioned her in the fucking OR.
Oh my God, girl.
Because she was still conscious. I'm like, how determined is this woman? I'm thinking if somebody shot me in the face, I would just lay down and die.
You're like, why, man?
Why? Why you do that? So this one was called in immediately because she had survived, and blockades went up. This time they found a flashlight outside the house, and they found bloody footprints and smudged fingerprints all over the place. That night, they picked up 12 different men for questioning. None of this. If you were walking down the street, buddy, you got picked up.
Right.
Everybody. If somebody said, I saw Sam's car in the neighborhood, Sam was brought in. They questioned everybody. They brought in bloodhounds the next morning, but they lost the scent when they reached the highway. So that's what I'm thinking. On Sunday, that was May 3rd. So on Sunday, May 5th, the title on the front page of the Texarkana Gazette said, "Sex Maniac Hunted in Murders," because there was no robbery.
Okay. Wasn't there only one sexual assault, or was the...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean, by the way, that there isn't a sexual incentive to it. That it
true.
is two separate things.
Right. But the article said it was solely based on the fact that her purse was sitting there open and it had money and jewelry in it. And there were valuables in the house.
Just like shooting people.
Apparently. So the big thing, I can't remember the guy's name, and I don't know why I didn't write it down. There was some guy from the Texas Rangers who was a big tracker, and he was a big dude, and they've made movies about him. And he came in to investigate. They brought a mobile radio transmitting station from Austin, which had the newfangled technology of allowing radio contact between cars. Not just between the car and the station, but between the cars, so they could organize the manhunt. The local paper ran a photo, which was their first ever color photo of that flashlight, saying, "Have you seen this flashlight? Who do you know that owns this flashlight?" It was heavily on the public. You need to do your duty and tell us who you've seen with this flashlight. I mean, it described it, and I guess flashlights weren't as common back then.
Okay.
People didn't have a drawer with 10 flashlights, none of which work.
Yeah.
They also citizens were asked repeatedly, consider who was out of pocket on the nights of these attacks. And I'm like, now we don't keep that close a track of our friends. Now, I know where Joe is, but if somebody
I don't even know where Jeff is all the time. He just disappears. I wake up, he's not there.
See, in our house, it's the other way around. Joe, I know where Joe is. Joe's like, MB, I don't know. Did she go to work?
Get a text, are you gone? That's what I text Jeff all the time.
Where you go?
Yeah. That is actually literally like, where you go? Why you leave?
I just text.
Are you bringing me something?
I just text, where you? Where you? 2 words. Now, by 1948, they were starting. They've never figured out conclusively if the attack on the Starks, the farmer and his wife, was related to the first set of murders or not. They haven't conclusively proven that yes, it was, or no, it wasn't.
I mean, was it the same weapon? Was it the same kind of bullet?
Same kind of bullets.
Okay.
But a rifle?
Yeah, in
a rural area.
Yeah. It's like the axe.
Yeah, it's like the axe.
Who doesn't have one?
Who doesn't have a bloody axe hanging out by the door? So the town, needless to say, Texarkana was panicked. They set curfews for businesses. People started... Up until this point, people never locked their doors. People started locking their doors.
I mean, it doesn't matter. He was shooting them through windows.
Well, yes, but people sold out. Stores sold out of locks, guns, ammunition, window shades, and Venetian blinds.
You can't see me, so you won't kill me. I like
Right. That. Window sash locks, screen door hooks, night latches, and other protective devices. So, yeah, and people were nailing blankets over their windows. People were moving in with their family because more people could keep watch overnight. If a husband had to be out of town on business, the mom would move her children and herself into a hotel. I mean, it was full blown pit. And I'm like, if you're not going out parking, you don't. But anyway, and here was the other thing that happened. There was more than one incidence of this. Armed teenagers would go out parking in hopes of catching the killer.
Oh, yeah. We set a booby trap. You know what? He can see that you're not making out there, guys.
So one of the cops got out and walked up to the door and said, this is officer, or this is deputy, whoever, what do you think you're doing? And the girl is pointing a gun at him and says, well, it's a good thing you said who you were because I have a gun. And they think the Texas Rangers who were involved actually had some of their children come and act as bait.
Wow.
No,
because he was done.
He was done. Now, there was a suspect, Ewell, I think that's how you pronounce it. It's Youell. And his wife, Peggy Swinney. So, Ewell was a car thief.
Okay.
And they, picked him up for stealing a car. And he's like, well, am I going to get the chair for this? I guess you've got me for so much more than just stealing a car. And they're like, what the fuck?
Like what?
His wife said he was guilty. His brother and his brother-in-law are all like, yeah, we kind of suspected he might be the killer. But later, the wife recanted the story that she told.
Okay.
Ewell always maintained that he was innocent after his first little, at the end and the police were never able to put them at or even near the scene of the crime, and his fingerprints didn't match anything. On November 5th, 1948, there was an 18-year-old freshman at the University of Arkansas. His name was Henry Booker Tennyson. His nickname was Duty.
Nicknames back then weren't flattering much of the time, it seems.
Well, anyway, he was found dead in his bed at home in Fayetteville, Arkansas. And apparently, he left many suicide notes. One of which said he was the killer.
One that said he was Marshmallow Fluff Man.
Yeah, but then another one was sort of a very straightforward, my family is going to be so much happier when I'm gone. They don't have to waste money on me going to college because I don't do very well. And my mother won't have to worry about me. And so his girlfriend later came forward, or after the suicide came forward, and alibied him. And his prints didn't match. So to this day, they don't actually know who committed the Texarkana Moonlight Murders.
I'm surprised that with a town that size, they didn't just make all the men come forward and give their fingerprints in that era.
I know.
It's your duty. They were big on that. It would be like, it's your duty to come and give me your fingerprints.
Somebody made a note of the fact that the Selective Service, the board where you had to go register for the draft.
Yeah.
2 different guys from the Selective Service came out and said, nobody has ever come to us and asked us if there were any, because the thinking was this was somebody who was unbalanced.
Yeah.
And that if they had tried to join the military or had gone through the steps to be drafted, they would have been knocked out because they were unbalanced and that was a lead that nobody followed up. And I'm like, I don't know that, because then there was speculation that because he was such a good shot, although for fuck's sake, he was standing right next to the car with some of them. How hard is that? But they were like, well, maybe he was some kind of sharpshooter. So they didn't check, are there any discharged sharpshooters in the area?
All right.
I'm like, that seems like a stretch.
Well, and he disappeared. Maybe he was successfully drafted. Maybe they're unbalanced things because he stopped doing it for whatever reason after running around like a big cuckoo head.
Yeah, if he did this, he did at least 3 attacks. 4 if the farmer and his wife. But it just seems to have no. And it was very personal with the first attack, the one where they weren't killed, because take your fucking pants off. Why?
Well, and him to run this. No, not that way. Run the other way.
way.
Why did you run away?
Right?
What did you
so
say?
there was a lot of interaction with the people, and then there wasn't with the other ones. So who knows? But yeah, it's still a mystery.
Yeah, the farmer one might have just been somebody on, like, he had a problem with the farmer and his wife, and was like, well, this guy's running around shooting people. Why don't I go ahead and...
Although they weren't able to, none of the articles said, well, he was highly disliked, or he'd been having a feud with cousin Fred.
Maybe there was a property feud and nobody knew. Because they weren't for the, what was it? Hatfields and McCoys.
Oh, maybe. But yeah, so I was just like, it's just so odd to me that these giant murders happen and nobody ever knows. Which goes back to what I was talking about earlier with the murder that happened much more recently in upstate New York. It happened, I think, about 8 years ago. And it's like, somebody has to know. Somebody, the one I was talking about that my sister was telling me about. Yeah. And I'm like, so did somebody, and now they're reinvestigating it. I'm like, so did somebody just snap? I mean, if I called you up and said, if I'm speculating this happened, if I called you up and said, I just killed someone, would you come help me kill the body? Or help me hide the body?
Yes,
I
will
you
come
would.
Help you kill the body.
I know that you would. But, it's like, how long could you keep that secret? How long could that weigh on you? And would you never tell anybody? So say this happens and you tell your girlfriend, and then later you break up. What is her inspiration to keep your secret? Or your what? You tell your wife, or and you get divorced. What is the inspiration? Somebody had to have known. Just like in this case, somebody, I can't help thinking somebody had to have known something. Mm-hmm. But the investigative methods back then were not.
Well, yeah.
They were not as good.
So crap it up. That's why Zodiac wasn't caught. That's why Golden State Killer wasn't caught until way later.
But in my next episode, I will talk about one where there is some good investigative work.
Ooh, I'm talking about a family curse in the next one. One I didn't know existed, so it's not like the Kennedys or something.
So please send us your tips and your thoughts and what you would like to hear about. If you've had something scary happen, tell us about it. We would love to hear about it. Our email is mysteriesmonstersmayhem@gmail.com.
There's a form on the website, which is mysteriesmonstersmayhem.com.
And we're on Facebook. And that Facebook is where we put all of our links to the sources that we use.
And pictures when we have them.
Pictures. If we reference books or people, that's where we write that down too. So if you go, what was that movie? So thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.